Welcome to Offscreen. Today we're reading PIERRE by Edwin Cannistraci and Frederick Seton. A self-indulgent French nihilist attempts to steal the Mona Lisa and resell it for the money to move out of his parents' basement. So the script appeared on the blacklist in,
Oh, I forgot this was on the blacklist.
2008, I think? 2009? Around then.
Okay.
Oh wait, actually maybe 2006 or 7.
Anyway, it was on the blacklist,
Correct.
and it was in development
It's in
for a while. I mean,
yeah.
I guess it still
It's
is.
still in development, but it doesn't look like it has much traction. Various people have been attached, starting with Jim Carrey and Jason Reitman. They've both since left the project.
Steve Carell
Steve
was
Carell,
rumored.
Russell Brand were also rumored. Larry Charles was set to direct Sacha Baron Cohen in it for a while.
Okay.
But as of right now, it doesn't seem like it's
Yeah. Like
close to getting made.
the last piece of news we found was like 2012, right?
Right.
Yeah. So this is probably not getting made, but that's not going to stop us. But we don't really know much about the writers. I guess they haven't really written anything else that's been produced.
No, they have no credits, but they have a number of other sales, and apparently they've done some hired gun work for most of the major studios.
Oh, okay.
Universal, Paramount, Warner Brothers.
Okay. Should we talk about that logline being problematic, or should I just read the summary?
No, let's talk about the logline, because
Okay.
this is, in essence, a logline culled together from all of the articles that we've seen about it.
And I feel like you're a little more offended by this than I am.
Well,
I don't mind that some of the...
It's just not true.
Pretty much all of it is incorrect, technically, according to the plot of the
Well, what is the
screenplay.
logline if not... What is the logline supposed to be if not a one-sentence summary of the plot?
I think for the sake of whittling it down just to one sentence, sometimes you have to oversimplify things.
Right, but you don't need to say things that are just out and out untrue. They don't steal the Mona Lisa. They don't intend to sell it at all, much less for the money to move out of his parents' basement.
He does transport the already stolen painting, so it's still stolen, technically.
Right, I mean...
And he gets money for doing it, so... That's, like, close enough to me. The spirit of it is still there. I think it's okay.
Sure. It's not, I guess, true to the spirit of the screenplay, though.
But
it doesn't really matter, because...
I do think it's an indication of the screenplay being weak that you have to fudge the logline.
I don't even know that you have to fudge it. Whoever was writing these articles, I think, was just lazy.
Well, no, I think it's hard to write a good logline for a bad script, and they made a logline that sounded better, and if you followed the logline to a T, it would have helped the script if they had done some of the things a little more that
Perhaps.
the logline emphasizes.
Well, do you want to get into what the screenplay is actually about?
Okay. Alright, here's my summary. Pierre is a walking, talking
The
French...
dude.
What?
The main character's name is Pierre.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pierre is a walking, talking French cliché, a cynical existentialist type with a lit cigarette perpetually dangling from his lip. He despises everything, including his own girlfriend, who Pierre simply refers to as Scumbag. Scumbag, by contrast, is happy-go-lucky, always doting on Pierre, and laughing off even his most vulgar insults. Because of his hateful demeanor, Pierre has never been able to hold down a job, and so still lives with his parents. In an effort to help him, Scumbag introduces Pierre to a wealthy man named Fairborn. As it turns out, Fairborn is an art thief, and he offers Pierre a job transporting a stolen painting from Paris to London. Pierre agrees to help, as he believes that money is the one thing in life worth pursuing. The robbery goes off without a hitch, and Pierre betrays little concern even when he learns that it's the Mona Lisa he'll be transporting. He brings Scumbag along for the ride, but on their way to London, she notices some strange markings on the painting, an anagram. In the hopes that it may lead to yet another treasured painting and, therefore, more money, Pierre takes them on a series of detours across Europe, consulting various and increasingly absurd acquaintances who he hopes might be able to crack the code. Along the way, somewhere in Belgium, Pierre takes a liking to another girl, known only as Hot Bitch. Scumbag's initial outrage at the situation is neatly resolved in a lurid three-way, and the trio proceeds on their adventure. When at last their clues come to a dead end, Pierre gives up and resolves to simply keep the painting for himself. The gang returns to Paris, but when Fairborn discovers that his orders have not been followed, he kidnaps Scumbag in retaliation. Pierre, with the help of Hot Bitch, storms Fairborn's fancy home with the Mona Lisa still in tow. Having dragged it along on all of their adventures, sometimes literally, the painting is much worse for the wear. Still, Fairborn is willing to accept it, but Pierre shoots him anyway. By now, police have arrived on the scene, including a certain French inspector who has been trailing Pierre from the beginning, lying in wait to make his move. But now that his moment has arrived, Pierre simply shoots him too, rather anticlimactically. Pierre, Scumbag, and Hot Bitch make their getaway. The whole experience seems to have jaded Scumbag a bit, but her newfound bitterness only brings her closer to the even bitterer Pierre. Together with Hot Bitch, they ride off into the sunset. The end.
The summary reads a lot funnier than the screenplay.
Does it really?
Actually, yes. Yeah.
It's a weird one. So where to begin? I had to leave out a lot in that summary, which I feel like I say that every time, but there were so many other characters that I didn't even mention in there, because I feel like there were a lot of just unimportant characters in the script.
Well, the whole screenplay is intentionally, self-awarely, unimportant.
Yeah, it reads...
Pierre is such a nihilist that his complete negation of everything just, permeates through the entire screenplay.
He doesn't care about anyone, and so neither do we, really. The characters, other than Pierre, don't really get a whole lot of depth to them.
But I'm fine with that, I guess.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's clear what the script wants to be, and this is why
a breezy, absurd parody of European cliches, I guess.
Yeah. It reads almost like a skit or a series of skits sometimes.
Right, kind of an extended skit, I guess.
Yeah. Which is why I hesitate to be, super critical of it. I mean, it's not a great script overall, not to spoil our final judgment, but I don't think it's aspiring to be anything really great. So you have to take it on its own terms, and it is pretty funny. There's some pretty funny stuff along the way.
There are funny moments, but a lot of eye-rolling ones, because Pierre is just so despicable.
Yeah.
He just says the most hateful thing at, any particular moment.
Can we, give some examples? Because I want to read the very first line I thought was pretty great, actually, and it was a good introduction. He's sort of narrating. He does a thing throughout where there are these moments where you just see him against a black background, and there's billowing smoke from his cigarettes, and he just comments on whatever is happening at the time. But the very first thing we see is that, and he says, "My name is Pierre. My whore mother and idiot father fucked some years ago, and 9 months later I was ripped from oblivion's womb into this shit life. I smoke cigarettes." So that's the very first thing that we hear from him, which is a pretty good indication of the rest of it.
Right.
But he's also, really vulgar and insults his girlfriend constantly, to the point where I felt kind of bad for her, and, she's too dumb. She just goes with it and doesn't care.
Right, but they're not, these characters aren't real people.
I know,
They're so divorced from anything resembling. They're just absurd parodies of types.
Yeah.
I feel like.
I mentioned the inspector, the French police inspector, just at the very end of my summary, but he really is here throughout, but it's just, I didn't talk much about him because why didn't he just catch him all those times? He's constantly right on his heels.
What crime did Pierre ever commit besides
transporting the stolen Mona Lisa? I mean, that's a pretty big deal.
Oh, obviously that's a mistake.
But all he does is follow Pierre around for the whole time. He follows them all throughout Europe, through all these countries, and there's this thing they do with just almost like a telepathic communication between the inspector.
They're both speaking in voiceover, but they're having a conversation,
which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, what do you make of all of the I guess kind of like postmodern stuff. Like at one point, they say they're driving down the coastline. The coastline resembles,
Southern California or
yeah,
something.
exactly, like the Pacific Ocean coastline.
Yeah.
And then there's also, of course, at the end when scumbag Michelle, her actual name, which she's seldom called, says that she's going to shoot Pierre because it's what the script calls for.
Right.
So it kind of like
and she actually
refocuses the movie as being a movie.
She actually pulls out a copy of the script and shows it to Pierre, and shows where it says that she's supposed to shoot him, and she tries to do it, but she just can't. She's like too much in love with him, she says. But yeah, it's like a ridiculous little moment. And yeah, sort of a postmodern thing, I guess. I didn't really think of it. I didn't put all those pieces together and think of it all as like a...
Well, there's other stuff too, like when they mention in voiceover that they're passing through all these European countries, like snap of the fingers, without passing through customs or anything.
And they're like, oh yeah, how did we get to this country so fast? Yeah.
But if any, I don't think it really adds anything beyond kind of making fun of the liberties that movies take with.
Yeah. It reminded me a lot of Austin Powers for multiple reasons.
Okay.
They have a joke in one of the Austin Powers movies where they're supposed to be in England, I think, and Austin says something about like how the countryside looks suspiciously like Southern California.
Oh, okay.
They also do a thing in this script, which Austin Powers does, where they have these little musical interludes, where it's just like him and a bunch of like girls dancing to music. Mm-hmm. Austin Powers does that too.
Austin Powers is more consistently funny though.
Yeah, and it doesn't hit you over the head as much with the, I guess, the self-reflexive stuff.
Yeah, I didn't really feel that this did too much. I wasn't put
off
by it.
All those things you were saying. I don't know. I feel like the attitude of this movie, it feels like it's coming from a place of like dislike almost, or disgust with actual movies. Like it's kind of making fun of the medium in a way that is not well intentioned.
Oh, maybe.
It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like Austin Powers, you can tell it's clearly paying homage to these types of movies.
To like the James Bond movies.
Yeah, and it really loves them and it's having fun with it. But maybe I'm just being swayed by Pierre's overwhelming like cynicism. But it feels like a much more negative sort of like reference or homage type thing going on.
I don't think it'll be made. I think it's way too homophobic to be made now. Like that's kind of one of his go-to jokes, and that just wouldn't.
Well, there's like specifically one friend of his that he always says he's always calling him a fag and stuff, but I didn't think it was overall like super homophobic.
I feel like at least 50% of his insults were of that type. Which, I mean, he's just he is intentionally a despicable dude. So
yeah,
I guess this is fitting with the character, but I think people wouldn't. I feel like even in like the last decade, I think that's somewhat changed. That being
yeah, I guess so. But I feel like there are plenty of other reasons before that this wouldn't get made.
Well, yeah. First and foremost, it's not very good.
Yeah, but I mean, you also just have a character like I didn't even mention some of these other ones, but like his girlfriend, he just calls scumbag. He has a friend he just calls pigeon shit.
Right. It's just complete contempt for everyone.
Yeah. Which that guy pigeon shit kind of comes into play later. He's an American, I think, right? And he was like
who is essentially a serial killer.
And he's like in hiding, yeah, and that's why he's in France. Which I guess it doesn't really matter. It doesn't end up mattering at all to the story. That was like part of the reason that the police inspector was kind of keeping an eye on Pierre, I guess, because he was hanging out with this guy. But
that guy, but the police inspector was so much more concerned with Pierre than he was with the actual dude that killed multiple women across like continents.
Yeah.
And there's this one like poignant speech from Scumbag where she talks about seeing this little kid who can't play with the other kids, and then later he's like crying with some dead flowers.
Yeah.
And she extrapolates to assume that like that's what Pierre was like as a child.
Yeah.
She tells this to Pierre, and Pierre basically tells her that she's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
But then later, when she catches him having sex with Hot Bitch,
Yeah.
he says he is that child and
Which clearly he's only saying it to
get her back.
win her back. And,
Not even win her back, just to get her to shut up and come back and join in the threesome.
And it actually works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there was very little tension in this.
Yeah.
There was almost no conflict except between
There's no conflict.
Pierre and other people.
But that's like superficial conflict.
Yeah.
It's either Pierre being an asshole to someone and them getting upset, but only like mildly because nothing ever comes of it.
Yeah.
Or like people just laughing Pierre off because who could be so over the top like Pierre?
Yeah. I want to go down the list of some other characters that just came and went really quick, but some of them were kind of funny. There was Alpha Romeo, who was like the first person that Pierre tries to consult about that anagram, and that's in Italy. This guy lives in Italy,
Right.
and he doesn't help Pierre at all. He just wants help with his own problem, which is that his wife is fat and he wants to get with his own cousin. I don't know what he expects Pierre to help, but
I don't know that he expects Pierre to do anything.
Okay.
I don't know.
That whole sequence was pretty pointless, I thought.
There was one funny moment where he's where he's saying grace before the nice meal.
Yeah.
Their nice dinner. And he's like, thank you God for like all of these things like that people would normally say. And then he finishes by saying, and please let my fat wife drop dead so I can marry my smoking hot cousin. Something to that effect.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I guess, kind of funny.
The second person that they go to consult about the code is like a Swiss professor who has an even shorter little segment. He's just like talking about some anecdote from his past and it's really boring, and so they just leave him immediately and move on to the next guy who's named Klaus, and he's like a German, I don't even know if he's like a scientist or like a performance artist or something. He's like a very strange laboratory where they meet him. And he also has in his laboratory a cat in a wheelchair, which they never explain, but I actually thought that was kind of funny. Like, Pierre sees this cat in a wheelchair, and I think Klaus is like pushing it around in the wheelchair. And Pierre's just like, what is that? What's going on? And Klaus just says like, "What indeed?" And that's his whole answer. And he never explains, he acknowledges it, but he never explains what's going on. And then randomly in the very last like action sequence of the movie, France, which is in a whole other country, this like he meets Klaus in Germany, but then there's this whole shootout in France at the end. Suddenly the cat in a wheelchair is just sitting there in the room, and Pierre shoots it because he's just like shooting everyone.
Well, and he says something, and you think you were special. You're not.
Yeah, something like that.
Something very nihilistic.
Yeah.
I feel like each of these sequences are kind of like parodies of the respective art cinema of each of those countries.
Oh, really?
So like the one in Italy is kind of like a parody of the concerns of like Fellini, maybe. The rambling Swiss professor, like with all these ruminations on like life and whatever, is kind of Bergman-esque. Especially with his proclivity for wild strawberries, which is the title of a Bergman film.
I didn't catch that. You're probably right. I thought you were giving too much credit to this script.
I mean,
but
I think that's their intention. I don't think they really go too far with it.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like the whole movie is like a parody of like French New Wave, kind of, or at least like French existentialism.
Sure.
And I think towards the beginning they reference the Truffaut character.
Oh, really?
The Antoine, something like that.
I don't know.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Maybe that's part of the problem. There are just so many references this is making, and they don't amount to anything really.
They don't really go, because they also make fun of like American movies too, where they're like making fun of Meet the Fockers.
Oh yeah, they explicitly mention that movie.
Yeah.
but also there was sort of a Da Vinci Code-esque thing going on
With
with
the
the
anagram.
code and the painting, and it actually does. This is another thing that goes nowhere, but they end up at like a bar in Scotland, and they learn about some kind of prophecy that apparently Scumbag, since she's the one who actually discovered the code and the painting, that means that she's actually like the descendant, the last living descendant of Jesus Christ and Mary
Right.
Magdalene, I guess, which is pretty much the Da Vinci Code thing. But then that just never, they just drop that and
Yeah.
it just never goes anywhere.
I mean, ultimately, like Pierre, the character, the screenplay is quite nihilist.
Yeah,
Like,
I guess you could say that.
It's making fun of everything. Everything is unimportant to it.
It's hard to respect a script like that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I just don't think. I think it's just very flippant in this case, and it doesn't feel earned. I guess. Like, it's easy to just say everything's fucking stupid, you know?
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention, there are a lot of specific musical references.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that.
I don't know what to make of it. I think this is another thing that probably would make it like challenging to make, or if you made it, I don't think all of these could remain. It's just every scene almost there's a specific song. Yeah. I don't know most of them. A lot of them are French songs.
I mean, if it's a movie being made with Steve Carell or Sacha Baron Cohen or Jim Carrey, I feel like they could get the budget to clear all those songs.
Yeah, maybe. I just think.
But is it an effective writing technique?
Well, this is the thing I was going to say because it's interesting to me. I think it's effective in one way, but in a way that ultimately I don't respect a lot. I think it shows vision on the part of the writer. At least that's what a lot of people think when they read that. They think like, oh wow, this guy really has a specific idea of what he wants, and they think that equals good writing almost. That's like just a good sign, and they want to that bolsters their confidence in the script and in the writer. And I think similarly, just with such a bold character as Pierre, that's the reason I think this script got sold, is because of stuff like that. Like, that character and that voice are really probably what sold it. And stuff like the music, too, that being very specific about what it wants. Yeah, it all combines to make it seem like there's a really specific vision here, but ultimately, like, the plot is so thin and everything else comes up so short. I think it's just a good indication of why certain scripts sell and why that's not a good reason for them to sell.
Interesting. I guess for me reading it, I didn't give the screenplay, I didn't see the musical cues and give it credit for those. If I didn't recognize the song, which I didn't for many of them,
Yeah.
like, it was just, oh, okay, this doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know how it would change my experience of reading the screenplay. So I think there was too many of them for it to really be an impactful technique.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. I think it's kind of empty.
Yeah. Like, had I been really, like, in the one or two instances where I was familiar with the song, I was like, oh, okay. But it wasn't really, it was kind of superfluous. It was...
I think it's just more there for its own sake, just to make a point.
Yeah.
Not to actually set the scene.
It doesn't do anything for the reader. And I guess it's there if it goes into production or something.
Yeah.
Or it's more effective in that way. I like the line on page 94. Can I transition to something entirely unrelated?
Yeah.
He says, let's see, let me find page 94. So he's talking with Fairborn, and this is like when Scumbag has been kidnapped by him. And Pierre is developing scruples. You are more foolish than I thought. You walked in here a live man with money. You'll walk out a dead man with nothing. And for what? The scumbag? A woman? You are not the man I thought you were, Pierre. Then Pierre says, I've drunk a liquor no one taxes. I thought that was a good line.
I wrote that same line down because I didn't understand it. What does that mean?
I think love is the liquor that no one taxes. right? It's like
Is
intoxicating.
that a thing people say?
I hadn't heard it before, but that's how I took it, and I thought it was kind of clever and funny.
Oh, okay. So he's like drunk in love, almost, you
I
might
mean,
say?
yeah, much like Beyonce and Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That does kind of make sense. That was one of those potentially poignant moments, like, yeah, where, like, sort of like the story that you mentioned with the kid. I
Mhm.
felt like it came close to having more of an emotional core. Like, I liked the idea that, like I mentioned this in the summary too, I think. They try to suggest that Scumbag got a little more, like, jaded or something from all of the stuff they've been through, and that Pierre kind of likes that in her,
Mhm.
and he comes to actually have more, like, real deep feelings for her, but ultimately they dismiss that too. But
Yeah,
this was
like
one of the
everything.
moments. This was one of the moments where it seemed like it might actually go there.
I mean, I feel like in context here with the rest of the what happens after it, it's kind of like a badass line he can say before shooting a guy in the face. You
Yeah,
know?
that's probably more of the purpose of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like this gesture or this posture.
Yeah. We forgot to mention one really important aspect of this, um, which was interesting. I wonder what you would make of it. But the first act, roughly, is supposed to be in black and white.
Right.
And when Pierre accepts the job to transport the painting, he's paid half of the money up front. And as soon as he takes the money, suddenly his world turns to color. And they even, like, the characters even make a point of saying something. They remark on it about something about how the world looks very different when you have money.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then when he gives back the painting at the end, or he kind of tries to, he's offering it back, and he like throws all the money back at Fairborn because he just wants to get Scumbag back. As soon as he throws the money, it goes black and white again. What did you make of that?
I think it was another like movie as a movie thing, but I don't know what to take from it beyond that, if anything.
It seems like such a huge choice to make
Mm-hmm.
for a film for very little reason. For like just
I feel like it's another like it's probably just nothing more than like the early French New Wave movies were in black and white. By like the mid '60s, they were in color.
I feel like that if that's the only thing you're trying to do with it, it seems like it should just be like a quick one-off joke where it changes just for a moment to black and white, or changes from black and white to color, but it's just very brief. But for it to be like the whole first act of the movie and then much of the last part of the movie are in black and white, that's going to be pretty jarring, I think, for an audience, especially in like on a big screen. It doesn't seem to be giving enough weight to that.
Maybe
choice.
like the joke is that like with money comes like color. Like,
well, I mean, I
like
think
he's like like it's kind of like a movie industry observation critique or whatever.
What do you mean?
I don't know. Like now that Pierre's all invested in like getting money, everything's in color because like color sells. I don't know.
Well, I just thought it was like generally you can live like in a flashier kind of more exciting way when you have money.
Sure. Okay.
But
I mean, I don't really think there's much to it.
yeah. Oh, I wanted to mention one other thing, just really quick.
Yeah.
Formatting thing. Every time any character is mentioned in the script, their name is in caps.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
That's straight up just wrong.
Like,
You're
usually it's
supposed
just
to,
the first time.
Yeah, that's the point of doing it the first time, is to emphasize it.
Emphasize
So that
introduction.
you realize that this is the first time we're meeting this person, and yeah, you're trying to make an impression of them. And usually that's right when the character description comes. But if you do it every time, there's no point, there's no emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling these guys just actually didn't know that was incorrect formatting.
I mean, I don't know. They've sold a lot of stuff.
Well, was this one of their first ones? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean,
It's just bugging
I
me.
shouldn't say they sold a lot of stuff. They sold several things, it appears. But yeah, it's weird. There's some typos too.
Yeah, and I tended not to like the way in which they wrote a lot of things. Well, not so much the wording itself, but they don't make much effort to break up the action lines. There are a lot of huge blocks of description. which makes it kind of annoying to read. I guess it would be more annoying to read if the style of the writing wasn't so spare. That's one good thing this had going for it. It was very,
Right.
it felt very casual, the language, and very just sort of like off the cuff and fun and jokey, and it made it read really fast. So that helps balance it out a little bit. That was the only other thing I was going to say.
Cool.
We can get to our verdicts.
So overall, I would pass on both, personally. Just to be spare and concise about it.
Definitely a pass on the script. I don't know about the writers. Like, I feel like I want to meet them. I feel like if I met them both, I would decide which one is the smart one and which one is...
Wow, you're splitting them up.
Yeah.
What if they can't write solo?
They can't write together, so it doesn't matter. Might as well try.
That's funny.
Like, I don't know. Whichever one came up with the... I feel like one of them more than the other was the one that was behind much of the voice of Pierre.
And you like the voice.
I do think that was the best thing this script had going for it. And again, I think that's pretty much why it probably sold.
I feel like a parody, though, of existentialism is kind of, like, it's not difficult.
It's overdone.
Like, have you seen those YouTube videos, Henri the cat?
Yeah,
like, those are magical. Those are so funny. And it's just a cat.
And those are very short videos. This is a whole film.
But,
so, yeah, I'd probably pass on the writers. I would be interested to meet them and see what they're like, though.
For sure.
This definitely feels like a script that was co-written, though.
I don't know. What does that mean?
In a sense, like, it feels like they were just... It's like a prolonged joke conversation between two friends.
Okay.
Like, yeah, what if this guy did this? Yeah, and then he does this next. And they're basically just transcribing this conversation into a script.
Right, they're just throwing things
and
back and forth.
Yeah, and it felt like it was written very quickly. It felt like they just had some beers one night and pounded the script out. And in the morning they sent it out
and probably sold it
for like 6 figures or something.
Yeah. It is an easy read. Like you said, it's concise. And it reads quickly. So that's a plus to it. But I don't really personally find much value on it.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Alright. Next week we're going to read a script called Capsule by Ian Shore. A young man's life is turned upside down when he mysteriously begins to receive metallic capsules containing messages from his future self.